Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Sarah Cleveland. She's a retired colonel from the Air Force and the Senior Strategic Advisor for Public Sector at ExtraHop. Sarah, good to have you with us today.
Tom, thanks for having me here today.
And let's talk about visibility into networks. This is something you hear a lot nowadays because I think people are coming to the realization you can't modernize, you can't update, you can't really understand that which you can't totally visualize. And networks have gotten much more complex, much less easy to define in terms of perimeters in recent years. So why don't you tell us your view of visibility into network and why it's important?
So visibility is one of the foundational items to good cyber practices. If you don't know what your network looks like, it is impossible for you to do a lot of things that you need to do in order to maintain a proper network. And so those things being, you need to know what's on your network, who's on your network, how your data is moving throughout your network. Additionally, your endpoints, the age of them, the patching status of them, the health of them. So if you expect to get good performance out of your network, and if you expect to be able to protect your network, you need to know how that is working together.
Right, and so I would think then that it's not a static picture that you can look at and now we know what our network is, especially in the cyber world where things change so fast. But endpoints, data flows, users, that all is dynamic, right?
Absolutely, and that's where you need a little help from software tools, AI tools, and actually upskilling your workforce. So they all need to be working together. But it is a dynamic picture that you would be getting.
And if you look at the assets on the network and you want to have visibility to them, that's a data exercise in many ways. And if you look at the different elements that you want data about, that itself produces a great variation in data types. Is that one of the challenges in visibility? It's just, what you're going to learn about a device has a different data format than what you're going to learn about your data flows and the logs that are generated.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll have not just your data flows, but you have your endpoints, you have your users, you have your non-user entities. So there's a lot of things that are going on that visibility helps you manage.
All right, and so is one of the important activities in total visibility then somehow harmonizing various data types so that you get a picture that you can visualize?
Yeah, yes, 100%. So those different data types and where they're flowing, who they're flowing to, how they're flowing, it's key. So if you think about data analytics, you have people who do data analytics for outside company business, but the inside data analytics, you need data analytics for your data, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So that you can understand how your company's data is flowing, who it's flowing to, what it normally looks like. And it's not necessarily the data, like using that data to do business, but it's using that data to ensure your network is there so you can do business.
All right, and the other watchword these days besides visibility is zero trust, which is the way people are trying to get to, agencies are trying to get to a better cybersecurity posture. And maybe talk about the relationship between total visibility and zero trust.
So the zero trust concept is to assume there are threats within your network. So you have those key controls in place that visibility, then you can have visibility to that user's actions. And even the non-user entities having that zero trust, like this printer can only be reached by these other machines, so that helps you control the workflow better, helps you do microsegmentation of your network, which also can control like where people can go, what people can see, where they can pull data from. And if they have to go outside of that, access can be granted.
With respect to non-user entities, those can be applications. And so one of the important assets to understand is applications and their role in your network activity.
Yes, so application management, with everything working on an application, in modern network management. That application management process is key to visibility, to zero trust, to knowing how your data is being used, where it's being used, and it's also key to when you start to modernize, because you can also tell when those applications are being used a lot or not at all, and you could maybe offboard them, stop paying for them, get rid of them, so you can spend your money elsewhere. So the network visibility is key to not just good cyber hygiene and performance, but it's also good to management of your cyber assets, your IT budget. That way, when you start developing a plan to offboard and modernize, you know what you can modernize, what you can get rid of and are not using, what is too hard to maintain because it's causing a lot of energy to go toward the asset management to keep that patched, to keep that secure, and to shift into other technologies. So it helps you prioritize those upgrades.
It sounds like when you do that discovery of all of the assets that you would probably find a lot of, let's say, vestigial applications and network hops and so forth that, as you say, are not being used, but nevertheless, their existence on your network are vulnerabilities.
Those items that are maybe being used or maybe not being used as much, or
not used at all,
or legacy applications do create a vulnerability. Everything on your network creates a vulnerability. Everything on your network needs to be protected. So the things that are on there that you're not using, you need to get rid of them, because otherwise you have to spend time and energy protecting it. You have to spend time and energy monitoring it. The less complicated your network is, the easier it is to create that holistic picture. There's lots of ways to uncomplicate it, but the network is never going to be uncomplicated.
Right, and that's especially true in the cloud era. And on the question of applications, you may have numerous instances of an application. So that gets to the importance of making sure everything is patched, even if it's in the cloud, which you may not have direct control over. And also the zero trust context becomes important because the application does exist in numerous areas, and each one of those calls from each instance of the application has to have the zero trust framework imposed on it.
Yes, that is correct. So those numerous complications in our network, the zero trust helps manage that. Network visibility helps manage that. It becomes a balance of risk.
All right, and then we've been having a discussion about zero trust and modernization and cloud, and we could not have a conversation without talking about artificial intelligence. And this is coming into the cyber picture much more. Tell us what you see.
So artificial intelligence, AI, is going to be one of the tools that is going to make zero trust successful. One of the tools that's going to make network visibility attainable. And so we have to embrace that. So what's that going to require? That's going to require, one, that we embrace that culturally. Two, that we are open to dynamically moving forward with change. And three, educating the workforce on how artificial intelligence works. To simply be an analyst that takes the information in and then sends it out isn't going to make artificial intelligence as successful as it could be. You have to understand how it works and be able to understand when, garbage in, garbage out. So it's fed in by machine learning. It learns your network, it learns what it looks like, and it will then alert analysts on anomalies. But the person that's getting those alerts needs to understand how the alerts were created. And what artificial intelligence will do is make that, if we want to talk about the OODA loop, that OODA loop a lot smaller. It'll make response to anomalies a lot shorter. It'll make corrections to those responses a lot shorter. But we do need the workforce to be open to using artificial intelligence in order to augment what they already know. So they need to have a basic understanding on how to do, to bring it down to an analogy, mathematical formulas. But this is just the calculator that helps them do that.
So you would then need to maybe have a balance in a risk management architecture type of framework to know what things need to be fed up to people, operators, what anomalies they need to deal with based on what the artificial intelligence algorithm is seeing. But on the other hand, perhaps there are some lower risk types of changes or remediations that need to be done on your network or in your data or in your applications that the AI could simply invoke an orchestration of something that the operator doesn't have to be involved with, and you need to decide which each anomaly will invoke. Is that a fair way to describe it?
That's absolutely fair. And the good policy, I mean, and this is cyber hygiene starts with good policy, which has nothing to do with coding per se, has to do with being clear on your policies. But additionally, your workforce is now freed up to do things that are more intellectually taxing than watching ones and zeros flow across a screen, where I've worked with many people who've watched, the screen for ones and zeros, and you get screen fatigue, and you miss things. So now we can take that human out of that loop and put them in a loop that's more intellectually challenging. It'll provide you a better use of that person's time in providing that data analytics. One of the bigger things too is IT professionals no longer can stay in their cybersecurity team. They'll have to involve data analysts, they'll have to have multidisciplinary teams, and I think you get value out of having a team of diverse skill sets and diverse people and diverse thought in order to move forward in this journey of cybersecurity that we're all now on together.
You must have seen some things and activities in the Air Force that kind of informed your thinking about how to approach network management, network modernization, network security. Tell us about some of those.
So they're I think most of my approach to teaming didn't come from network monitoring or network security. When you read books about how Einstein looked at solving some of his problems, he looked at nature for a lot of things. When I look at solving some of the problems that get presented to me, I'm not as, high.
None of us are Einsteins, right?
No, but I look at what the military has taught me about small teams and teaming and working together with people. And those small teams are critically important in cybersecurity. You need to have a data scientist. You need to have somebody who knows how to do and break down the code. You need somebody who can do that packet inspection or pull that information from the past. You need various skill sets at various levels of competency in order to get what you really need. And I think when you start looking at zero trust, it's one of the things that attracts me to zero trust is you can't do it with one vendor. You can't do it with two vendors. You have to have a bunch of folks with a bunch of different technology come together and agree to work on this problem that is, one, it's a compliance issue for 2027. Two, is just good practice. And I do believe in my heart of hearts that we need to get after this in order to maintain our ability to live the lives that we want to continue to live in the United States of America.
Well, that's certainly a big picture. And maybe if you have a moment with respect to small teams and with respect to understanding all of the items on your network and having this multiplicity of skills in a small team, how does ExtraHop help enable those teams to do the work they need to do?
So ExtraHop is a really cool product. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. It is nothing like I've ever seen before. The dashboards is one of the things that helps with that upskilling of the workforce. It gives you an actual visual, a picture of what your network looks like, how your data is flowing, how much of your data is flowing, and where it's coming from externally and internally. So your north-south and east-west traffic, both of it. So it provides you that data that then you can sit down and be like, okay, this is where we've got to put resources first. And then the beautiful thing with ExtraHop is it's partner agnostic. When I say partner agnostic, I mean that you can pair it with other technologies and it works beautifully. It's not, you don't have to do some crazy yoga pose to make it work together. It works together, plug and play. And I think that's why Dell, Project Fort Zero, and Herb Kelsey's team chose us to be in their stack for these portions.
Yes, because you mentioned the need for multiple tools and multiple technologies to help enable zero trust. But a lot of agencies say that's the challenge, is dealing with multiple tools, and they want simplicity.
Right.
So it sounds like in the environment with ExtraHop, maybe some of the complexity of multiple tools gets abstracted.
Yeah, so by putting that together with other technologies, we can now go together as a vendor ecosystem and say this is how it works. And we can cover all 152 components in that fan chart.
All right, well, good to have you with us today, and we thank you for the insight.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the time you've given me.
We've been speaking to Sarah Cleveland. She's retired colonel in the U.S. Air Force, now the strategic advisor for public sector at ExtraHop. I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the Industry Exchange Cyber.